Hey folks, Colin here from Something's Recording. I am back with another quick tip for you on how to get an aggressive and hard-hitting snare drum sound using distortion. Okay, so once again, we're back on this same drum mix here we've been using. I'm going to take off these last two plugins here and show you the snare drum mix as it stands without the distortion and without this last little bit of limiting on it, okay? So here's our snare drum as it was mixed. Okay, sounds okay. Let's put our kick drum in. Could probably use a little bit more gain to sit with our kick drum. But notice the higher we push it, the more unbalanced it becomes with our kick drum, right? So we've got our bus compressor here. Let's put our snare drum back down where it was. And it's kind of just all attack on our snare drum, right? But we want to hear that low end weight too. So you can pull it up to hear that low end smack. But now it's pushing way too hard into the bus compressor. 11 dB compression, we don't want that. We want the bus compressor to be working evenly on our kick and snare, right? To hold our drum mix in place. Yeah, look how high our snare drum's hitting. That's not what we want. So let's pull that back down. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a distortion plugin to even out the attack on our snare drum while adding weight to give it that aggressive and punchy sound that we want our snare drum to have, okay? So here's our distortion plugin. Take a listen one more time beforehand and then afterwards. So it's kind of just all attack. It's pretty wimpy sounding. There's the sound we want. So this is a tool here we're using to emphasize the performance, okay? And add to the vibe of this song, okay? This is a faster, hard-hitting, kind of gent-style song. So in this drum mix, we want it to feel like he's really slamming into that snare drum, right? That kick drum's really going. And without this, it doesn't sound as hard-hitting, as aggressive as it should. It's very one-dimensional sounding snare drum, very short, very weak sounding. So let's throw in this again. You don't so much hear it as distortion as saturation on the snare drum. It gives you that impression he's really slamming into that snare drum. He's really giving this song all he's got. And that's what you want. We want to emphasize, we want to bring out the elements of the performance, okay? And that's what this distortion is helping us do, okay? So let me show you what happens if we drive this plugin a little bit more. So you can go way too much. So what you could do with this is you could go this far and then use the mix knob to do some parallel processing with it, okay? So you could have your dry snare drum, as we heard it before, and then you could mix in a heavily distorted sound, okay? And that would give you a little bit more of both worlds, right? You'd have your short snare drum, your dry sounding snare drum, and then you'd have this heavy distortion. And it would give you a little bit more of that, raw distortion sound in addition to your dry snare drum, okay? What we're doing here is we're just emphasizing the performance, okay? I don't want it to have that distorted sound. I don't want to hear the distortion plugin working. I want it to feel like he's just hitting this snare drum harder, okay? So that's all we're doing here with this plugin. Take a listen again. So it doesn't sound distorted. It doesn't sound like the mic's crapping out as he's hitting the snare drum. It just sounds like he's hitting it harder. We're getting more tone out of it. Like I said before, this is kind of one-dimensional. You're not getting much tone. You're not getting much character out of the snare drum. So this is emphasizing our original snare drum. It's not adding EQ. It's not adding any kind of compression or limiting or anything. We're just imparting more character and more vibe, okay? So take a listen again. One more time without and one more time with. Weak, wimpy. So it evens out our attack as well, okay? So that little bit of saturation, that little bit of distortion makes our attack sit right with our kick drum, okay? So it's not poking way out front. We're not trying to balance the attack of our drum with the tone of our drum. This does that for us, okay? So let's throw our limiter in and let's throw it into the rest of our drum mix, okay? And notice it sounds like it belongs, right? It sounds like that's the way the snare drum should sound. Okay, so let's listen to our room track. So you can hear in our room track, he's really slamming into that snare drum, okay? He's giving it everything he's got in every hit, okay? And without this distortion plugin, our snare drum does not sound like that's what's happening. It does not sound like that's the snare that's going on in our room. It sounds like a completely different snare. So we throw on that distortion plugin, it sits right with what's happening in that room. He's given everything he's got into that snare drum. And this distortion plugin brings out that element of the performance, okay? So if you need a different way to add more attack, more aggression to your snare drum, next time, try reaching for a distortion plugin rather than an EQ, okay? So instead of just pulling up a little bit of high mids, a little bit of 200 hertz to give your snare some weight, some more attack to make it more aggressive, try reaching for a distortion plugin to impart some character and some tone to bring out the performance of your drummer. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys soon in the next video.